From a think tank, the Overseas Development Institute says 1 in 3 people across the world are overweight or obese. The institute says governments need to tax fatty and sugary foods.
Well, Kevin Watkins is behind the report and joins us now alongside Carole Wright, who lost 20 stone after doctors warned her she may die if she didn't lose weight. Morning, both. Thanks very much for joining us.
Good morning.
Let's just talk about your story first of all, because what you lost 19 stone, which is an
10,
extraordinary amount of weight to lose.
Yeah.
What was the trigger to lose it?
I was told by the doctor that if I didn't do something about my weight, then I was going to die, but I didn't really know what to do about it. I knew it wasn't a case of putting my knife and fork down. I'd always been big. I'd tried every diet, every fad thing going in that you could do, and I tried everything. And it was really just walking through the doors of Slimming World and finding people who understood what I was about. There was no judgment. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged.
And when we see those images there of how you were,
yeah.
I mean, you talk about, I mean, people, you must get this all the time, people look at, you know, how big you were then, thinking, how did it come to that point? I mean, can you remember a time before when you didn't have weight issues?
No, I was 11 pounds when I was born, and I was a big baby, and I was a big toddler, and I was a large adult.
And do you look back and think about, I mean, specifically we're talking about food, aren't we, today? We're talking about diet.
Food, yeah.
Can you look back and see a pattern developing very early on in what you were eating or what you were given to eat?
Yeah, I think no, because in those days, my mum and my nana, it was just meat and 2 veg and things like that. I've always had a problem with food, but there's a wide range of problems around food. There is all about, you know, guilt about being big and how you're humiliated and things like that, and it's emotions and everything else. It's more than just one thing, like I say, than just putting the knife and fork down. And a lot of people have that kind of problem.
Let's just talk about your report, because you found it really is a serious problem worldwide. What are the main findings and what concerns you most?
Well, the big concern, you know, we know we have a huge problem in countries like Britain with around 2/3 of people who are either overweight or obese. But the big concern that comes out of our report is the rate of increase in overweight and obesity in the world's poorest countries, in emerging markets, where higher growth and urbanisation is creating a sort of convergence towards our pattern of overweight and obesity. And with that are coming all sorts of public health problems, you know, personal problems, people being pushed into poverty. And the central point of our report is, you know, this is a problem we can fix. It's a complicated problem. You know, there are behavioural aspects to it, there are economic aspects, there are social aspects. But if we don't act now to fix it, and if we don't stop sleepwalking our way through what is an epidemic, you know, we're heading for a very bad place as a global community.
Now, we spoke earlier on, and you were saying that 2 out of 3 people in the UK are now overweight or obese. How is it possible to get a non-stigmatising message across, whilst making it hard-hitting and something people really take notice of? Because you were mentioning, Carole, the idea of being stigmatising can make the problem even worse.
Well, you know, I mean, Carole's story is humbling and inspiring, I think.
Really,
and, you know, I mean, what I take from it, if only governments around the world had Carole's level of ambition and resolve, we wouldn't be in this place. And, you know, we need to see governments standing up for people who are trying to change their lives and preventing the problem. You know, we need to see them regulating industry so we don't get kids addicted to high-fat, high-sugar foods. You know, we need to see them looking at prices. We need them providing the information and the evidence that people need to make informed choices.
And one of the ideas, you sort of indicated there, is that there might be a tax on fatty or sugary food.
I mean, that's horrendous. I mean, at the end of the day, it should be education, it should be choices, because the last people now that can be stigmatised are people that are overweight. You can't say anything to somebody about the colour of their skin or their race anymore, but you can still have a go at the fat person in the street. And you know, without empathy and without support and things like that, there's nowhere for us to go.
So you think by taxing that would make that problem worse? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you imagine if somebody hasn't got a weight problem and they have to pay so much for their chocolate. But the thing is, it's like he says about... Well, I know when I went into Slimming World, I was educated and I was given support, and that's the way I went. I was treated as an adult. It wasn't just something that they were going to do for us, you know, for governments to make them do things.
That sounds like you're at odds over this one, because Kevin's suggesting that, you know, those measures by government, possibly on tax or you know, making some foods cheaper than others, just
I think it's probably more is actually it's the supermarkets rather than the government, because I mean, it was like I was telling you before, I was eating this yoghurt thinking because it's got fat-free written across it, it was fine. It's so full of sugar.
Well, labelling's a very interesting issue, isn't it?
You know, I think it's extraordinary that we have our children who are being advertised at every night by food companies who are encouraging them to eat products which have 3 times the sugar content that is recommended by the NHS.
You're talking about drinks, for example?
Well, I'm talking about breakfast cereals, actually,
right.
but exactly the same would apply to drinks. And I think the point that Carole makes is the right one. You know, there's no substitute for empathy and compassion in treating this problem. But we do have to look at food prices as well. You know, the fact that some of the unhealthiest, most processed foods are very cheap. And you know, that's directing consumer demand into the wrong areas.
Kevin, Carole, thank you both very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. And that's the point lots of you making this morning about prices as well. Coming up, the BBC News Channel will keep you up to date on the latest on the weather.